The following story is also available as a read-only version. Check the link in the description if you're interested. The apartment building that Mr. Thomas Westmore was headed for stood out against the austerity of the early autumn street by the abundance of verdure in its window boxes. Beautiful flowers sprouted like a gallery of springtime bouquets, and vines crept over the walls so densely that it obscured the brickwork in many places. A newspaper landed at Westmore's feet. The headline was something about a Funkturm having begun operations. It was yesterday's paper, dated to the 3rd of September 1926. He gave it a little push, and a strong gust of wind carried it upward, above the houses, where it landed on a roof and burned where nobody could see it. Thomas Westmore was a tidy man. His brown three-piece suit was immaculate, pressed by the best laundry shop in town, and the black lacquer on his walking stick gleamed like the leather of his speckless shoes. He approached the building with confidence and knocked on the door 3 times. After a few moments, he could hear footsteps on the other side. A freckled old concierge opened, looking expectantly at Westmore with watery eyes. What little hair he had left on his head was unkempt, and his uniform was dusty. "Ja?" he demanded, unbefitting a man of his lowly station. "I am looking for one of the persons who lodge in this building," Westmore explained. He was also a succinct man. Speech should be tidy as well, he believed. Unnecessary words were clutter. "Ja, come in, please." The thick-set concierge trudged forward, beckoning Westmore to follow him into the parlour. There were traces of grime on the green-tiled floor, and the man's desk sagged under its own weight. A tall case clock decorated with floral patterns ticked away soporifically in the corner. A look at Westmore's watch, stored in the front pocket of his vest, informed him that it was 2 minutes behind. The only agreeable thing in the room was a vibrant tableau of flowers in a dark corner right next to the entrance. "What man are you looking for?" The concierge's English was heavily accented. He clearly struggled to find the right words. "His name is Ulrich Braunfels, an old acquaintance of mine," Westmore explained, careful not to touch anything. The concierge nodded and opened a faded ledger filled with tiny, oblique handwriting. Though the building had only 6 stories on the outside, the key rack behind him had well over 100 slots. It was cinctured by a copper frame engraved with artwork that cleverly hid a variety of protective runes. "He habitates here in one of the condominiums down below. It stands here he does not want to be bothered." "Which condominium does he reside in specifically? And on which floor is it located?" Westmore asked. The concierge looked at him for a moment as though he had not understood the question. "Schauen Sie, Mister, Herr Braunfels does not want to be bothered. I cannot say you where he lives." Westmore had to breathe in order to calm his irritation. The profession of the concierge was a menial one, and thus he could not expect it to be carried out by a person of significant intellect or skills of observation. "I shan't enjoy gaining the information from you by force, but I have the authority to demand it." In a flash, the tip of his walking stick was on the man's hand. He looked at Westmore, befuddled for a moment, then dropped to the ground, asleep. In light of the situation, it was a commensurate response. He leaned over the counter and turned the ledger around so he could read it. "Braunfels, U, in U34, it said. Westmore had expected to be going into a basement, but considering the true size of this place, that could have amounted to a long search. Satisfied, he moved toward the stairwell, looking up to a ceiling at a vertiginous height, and down at a floor in abyssal depth. The building must extend at least 20 stories in each direction. A significant feat of magical construction, if a bit tedious without elevators. Putting on his white gloves, Westmore walked down the creaking stairs to the third basement level. The hallways extended for 10 doors in each direction, and were lit by dim electric bulbs mounted to the walls. He did not have to walk far to find condominium U34. The name Brownfelds was written on a small plaque underneath the peephole, and angelic choir music, dulled by the heavy door, could be heard from the inside. Thomas Westmore could not help but smirk. Gently, he placed his gloved hand flat on the door, feeling its structure, loading it with energy. A push, ever so slight, and it exploded out of its frame as if hit by a locomotive going at full steam. It flew through the tenebrously lit room on the other side, smashing into a wall. The condominium had only one large room that opened into a kitchenette with a bar, and a small door to the lavatory. The floor was covered in thick carpets, and a gramophone stood next to the bookcase, continuing to play choral songs, unperturbed by Westmore's entrance. The gilded horn was polished to an impressive degree. A figure rose from the chaise longue, making it groan with relief. It was a gigantic and exceptionally ugly man. Though his trousers and shirt were respectably clean, the grotesque deformation of his visage, almost 8 feet from the ground, and the slight tinge of moss green in his skin revealed that this was no civilized being. His nose was the size of Westmore's fist, and irregular jowls hung from his oversized chin, which hosted a particularly dense concentration of warts. Ulrich Brownfelds was holding a massive tome in his hand, a silver pentacle beveled into its black leather cover. "Who are you?" he demanded in something that was clearly not a German accent. "Mr. Thomas Westmore," was the response. "You are called Nasbjörn Knarson, and dare I say you are quite far from where you are supposed to be." "This is not Scandinavia. I am permitted to go wherever I please in Germany," he responded. "You constitute an exception, as you are indeed unbelievably handsome for a troll, and would pass as a human to a sufficient degree that the Shadow Keepers would never have gotten involved." Westmore stood broad-shouldered, both hands resting on his staff. "So you are a Shadow Keeper?" It was a statement, not a question. "I have done nothing to break the statutes of secrecy, and I will be demanding reimbursements for that door." Westmore shook his head. "The statutes you have certainly not violated in a direct manner, but the Treaty of Damascus covers more than that." "What are you insinuating?" the troll demanded. "We've been watching you, Mr. Knarson. Your extensive sojourns into the occult scene of Berlin have not remained a secret." Westmore smiled. "Now that you have made contact with an extraplanar entity with the intent of creating a pact, you have made yourself guilty of a severe violation." Nasbjörn Knarson growled. "You would deny my people the choice of freedom. In the north we are hated, but most nations would take us if we did not look so inhuman." "The statutes of secrecy are a sacred good," Westmore noted. "It would be a choice offered to every troll individually. Those who wish to remain in the mountains and forests can do so," Knarson explained. "A pact with an extraplanar entity is illegal no matter the intent. No pact has been made, and no attempt to make a pact has been made either. You cannot arrest me." Knarson sounded certain. "Quite correct, but I am not here to arrest you, Mr. Knarson. I am here to kill you." Westmore did not hesitate for a moment. He lifted his walking stick and sent a bolt of lightning at the troll, powerful enough to rip him apart. But Knarson was faster than he had expected. He threw the book to block the spell, causing it to explode into a cloud of ashes, and rolled off to the side into the center of the room. Snarling, he punched in Westmore's direction with an open hand, sending a cone of force at him. The glove heated up to searing temperatures as Westmore caught most of the blast in the palm of his hand. Stumbling backward, he gave Knarson an opening. Nimble as a cat, The troll lunged forward, smashing his fists into the ground just before Westmore's feet. As if lifted by an invisible hand, he was rammed into the ceiling, gasping as he fell back to the ground, but aware enough to drive his stick toward Knarson's head. The troll evaded, punching Westmore through the air with the strength of a bull. He landed next to the stairwell, coughing, struggling to get back on his feet. A sharp pain in his chest informed Westmore that several of his ribs were broken. Were it not for the protective charms woven into his suit, he would most certainly be dead. Muttering a curse, Westmore rubbed his walking stick, making it crackle with electricity. He had expected some brute sitting in this cave, dressed in rags, stropping an oversized blade. It appeared this troll was studied and intelligent, not to mention agile. In his arrogance, he had assumed that none of the many Norse texts on fighting trolls he had in his library would have to be translated. Knarson looked at him, his hands vibrating with mystical force. He laid them on the ground, and a swell ran quickly through the paved floor. Westmore jumped over the crest of it, forming a channel of energy between his index finger and thumb, getting ready to shoot another blast of lightning through it. The troll made a pulling motion, and before Westmore could react, the swell had changed directions and rolled over him, throwing him forward. A stone hit the back of his head, and for a moment his vision went white. "Damn you, beast!" he shouted. He pushed himself up onto his elbows. Down the hallway, Knarson was performing strange motions with his hands. A small piece of rock fell to the ground next to Westmore's face. He looked up and found that the ceiling above him was crumbling. At the last possible moment, he pulled himself forward and jumped to his feet, stumbling as rubble crushed the area where he had lain not moments before. Enraged, he released a powerful bolt of lightning in Knarson's direction. The troll dodged it, a frightened look on his face, and it hit the back wall with a loud bang. Knarson raced toward him like a charging bear, bellowing curses in Old Norse. The entire corridor shook with the weight of his steps. Westmore barely managed to evade him by pressing himself into a doorway. He stepped out into the hallway again, struggling to stand upright, left arm outstretched toward his opponent, right arm with a recharging stick behind him. "I wish you had not interfered, Shadowkeeper," Knarson rumbled. "For the future of Trollkind, I must kill you." "Not likely." The words came out pressed, painful. The troll jumped forward, his massive hand swinging toward Westmore like a wrecking ball. The Shadowkeeper screamed out in pain as he dove beneath the strike, driving his stick into the door ahead and forcing a dangerous amount of energy through it. It was blasted apart, splinters of wood flying across the room on the other side, startling a cat sprawled on a diminutive table. Judging from the size of the remaining furniture, this condominium was occupied by dwarves. Fortuitously, no one but the family pet was home. Westmore retreated into the flat, frantically rubbing his walking stick. He would not die here today, he resolved. Next time he had to eliminate a troll, he would perform his due diligence. The troll was not visible through the battered doorframe, but Westmore could hear him breathing heavily to the right of it, most likely pressed against the wall so he would make a thinner target. Weighing his options, Westmore began twirling the walking stick. A flat, sizzling disk of electricity formed around his hand. There was a rumble in the hallway, but he could not see what was happening. Shaping a mental channel in his mind, Westmore prepared to deal Knarson the final blow. He moved into position, poured a final bit of energy into the attack, and stopped twirling. Ball lightning shot out of his walking stick, curving along a planned trajectory into the hallway, then sharply to the right. The crackle was deafening, and the cat screeched, darting out of the room. Knarson did not cry out, nor was there the stench of burned flesh. Carefully, Westmore approached the doorway and stepped back into the hall. There was a spot of black soot on the wall where the ball lightning had impacted, and the smell of ozone hung heavily in the air. Instead of a dead troll, there was a hole in the pile of rubble that had almost crushed Westmore earlier. Cursing, he climbed over it, pulling himself up the stairs, every movement sending jolts of pain through his torso. The entrance portal of the building stood wide open. The concierge was still soundly asleep, a look of confusion on his face. Westmore stumbled forward, into the street, looking down to the left and down to the right. "Damn it!" he spat. Nasbjorn Knudsen was nowhere to be seen. If you liked this story and would like to hear more, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. A new short story is uploaded every Wednesday, and there will occasionally be another one in between if I find the time. Thank you very much for listening and have a great day.